This episode is sponsored by Outgrow.co, the world's first all-in-one interactive content builder. Use Outgrow to build quizzes, calculators, tests, polls, forms, contests, and chatbots to generate leads and keep your audience engaged. Sign up for a free trial at https://outgrow.co.
Let's go on to the bigger questions, which you can answer with as much time and ease as you like.
Okay.
The first one is, what are the most significant recent advancements in payment technology that you believe will reshape the industry?
Okay. So let me talk about just three of them, because there are many, many new technologies out there in payments. I think the most important one is real-time payments and instant payments, and the advancements we've seen globally. We started off, if I take UK as an example, faster payments came into play in 2008. India UPI is an instant payment platform. We know SEPA is meant to go live by the end of this year. So there's a lot happening across the globe around instant payments. We've had some challenges. We know that P27, for example, we were looking forward to, but it has been taken off the books now. But I think as a whole, practitioners and the industry are looking forward to instant payments globally. And then secondly, I think one of the biggest trends we are seeing are CBDCs, and the different governments and countries kind of picking up the technology on CBDCs. I think it'll be interesting to see how different economies tackle the problem. We know China has already built technology on that. We know there are multiple countries who are quite optimistic about that, and some who haven't actually bought into it as yet. So as technology, I think it would be good to see how interoperability between these technologies actually work out. And how different countries will build out CBDC platforms. And then thirdly, I want to talk about generative AI, because I think that's a technology that's all-encompassing, and it has a massive impact on transactional banking and payments at large. It impacts your consumers on the retail banking side, and it impacts SMEs and commercial banking customers as well. So Gen AI has the potential to really disrupt organizations, disrupt financial services. So I think that's a big technology that we need to keep an eye out.
And so do you have any memorable example or a story around a successful implementation of any of these new technologies for one of your clients?
Yeah, so this wasn't for a financial service. It was for a merchant, and we were looking at a slightly different technology, cross-border payments. So it's somewhat related, because you have to look at interoperability between real-time payment platforms when we talk about cross-border payments. It's one of the big technologies that are being developed out there. So one of my kind of good memories was we were building out a cross-border payments platform for a client. We were trying to figure out which alternate payment methods that kind of sit across different countries that we want to support in that platform. And we had to do a number of customer interviews and pieces of research. And some of the stories that we heard from customers around how they use different APMs across Europe were quite interesting. So there was one around a customer who bought some goods from a merchant in Netherlands using Ideal, and then they had to return that when they came back to France using Euro. And that for them was a challenge. So I think that was one of the interesting use cases that we saw.
So you talked about Gen AI in one of your three things. How do you see it particularly transforming the payment sector?
Yeah, so if I were to talk about kind of top three ways in which payments are being transformed, and transactional banking as a whole is being transformed because of generative AI, I think the biggest play is around efficiency. If you look at commercial banking, transactional banking as a whole, you can see that we have a lot of overhead built into our operations. And what generative AI really does is try to, build in economies of generative AI into it. And you're really seamlessly trying to deliver your operations. So it could be front office, back office. It could be middle office as well. One of the use cases that we see quite a lot is around payments, investigations, and repair. And that's something that our clients are building out across the board. Secondly, I think one of the kind of big use cases we see are in the anti-money laundering space. So for transaction monitoring, sanction screening, because of the historical data that most organizations have, it's easy to use a generative AI technology, feed in that data, build that LLM, and feed in the output of that, and build out algorithms that can easily do transaction monitoring and sanction screening. So that's another use case that we're seeing. But in the customer-facing front, one of the things I'm excited for is how the technology plays into the hands of the relationship manager. Because if you look at an RM's role, at the end of the day, it's about kind of understanding their customer. And there's a lot of data that they can have at hand when they have the right tools in front of them. So I think generative AI can, again, build that capability using the data that organizations have today and publicly available data. So it really brings together a number of different data points to give them that intelligence when they're facing their clients.
Right, so we'd pivot a little. In your experience, how crucial is effective communication in driving adoption of all these new payment technologies? And how does marketing play a role in this process?
So I think if I were to start with generative AI, I think we've seen two camps of Gen AI. I think there's one camp that's fearful, and there's another camp that's hopeful. So I think it's very important for us not to lose that connectivity between Gen AI and humans. And for that, you need to really understand how you bring out the potential of Gen AI. And that's where I think communication and marketing comes into play. You really need to take the tooling that you're building around Gen AI and augment that to a level that anyone can understand it at a human level. Stop talking about coding, stop talking about the technology inside of it, talk about how it impacts your life and makes your life better. But that's really, really important. And even when you talk about technologies like instant payments, it's not applicable for all use cases, right? So you need to figure out which use case actually is applicable for a technology like that. So it's important to understand at different country levels and globally which use cases we want to drive adoption on, and that becomes an exercise of let's collaborate, let's work as a global incentive to drive that.
So with all this background in payment strategy, how do you integrate market insights and trends into EY's consulting services to address their clients' evolving needs all the time?
I mean, we do a lot of research on a regular basis, looking at the different sectors. So payments is, if it runs across retail banking, commercial banking, it involves smaller players, PSPs, EMIs, SMIs. And we work with a lot of fintechs as well. So it's important to kind of work across the board and get that insights that we can as much as possible across the industry. And things change all the time. I work in the technology space quite a lot, and technology is very fast-paced, especially with the developments we've seen recently. Gen AI reached 100 billion customers in 2 months. So that in itself tells you how advanced and how adoption is going in the market. So it's very important for us to be close to the market and understand the dynamics of it.
So can you discuss the role of thought leadership in all of this, like in shaping EY's approach to advising clients on all these payment technology adoption and transformations?
Yeah, so we work quite closely with a lot of industry experts, with industry bodies. We ourselves have a lot of experience in the industry. I mean, I've worked in payments for about 16, 17 years. So we bring all of that together, and especially when we can see there are emerging trends in the market, like generative AI, for example, and general AI as a potential hypothetical future. I think it's very important for us to bring together those minds and really, drive thought leadership in the market. And especially when we're advising clients, we need to be ahead of where they're thinking. So it's very important to understand, what is the vision in the industry? Where is this heading? What are the possible, futures that you need to address? Because that's the risk and that's the opportunity that clients would want to face. So yeah, I think thought leadership is very much fundamental to what we do.
And you mentioned before that it's a very fast pace AI in payments, but you also mentioned transaction monitoring to transaction sprint. So we know that the banking sector is definitely very slow getting the new innovations. In your perspective, as attending clients that are big, or small, what do you think needs to happen for the general process of trend to actually happen in the big organizations? Because so far, if you ask any parent in general, they are not using public LLMs, or they are not necessarily they are adopting the technology with them giving it at the moment to the customers the same way like a fintech.
Yeah.
Small. So
Yeah.
what do you think needs to happen for this to be boosted?
So I think if you look at a technology like generative AI, because it's so all-encompassing, for a mature organization, it can be quite hard to implement. But if you look at how the financial services providers are responding today, most of the large banks are investing in generative AI technology and tools. They haven't publicly made them available because at the end of the day, we aren't quite there yet with regulations and ethics for Gen AI concerned. So once we tighten the regulations and ethical guidelines around Gen AI, I think adoption would be better, and banks and other kind of mature organizations will put the technology out there. One thing we are seeing is that they are using this technology internally, or they've started to prototype and they've started to build proof of concepts around the technology. I think secondly, it's important to understand that fintechs don't have legacy technology. They don't have any legacy operations. They have a very flexible culture. So in that ecosystem, it's very easy for them to take something like generative AI and implement it. I talk to clients quite a lot about being AI first. And what that means is take a look at, especially if you're a mature organization, take a look at what team, what operation, what product, what function is mostly malleable and can drive technology like generative AI, and start there. Because you're not a fintech, you're not going to be able to en masse develop and implement that technology. Pick a team, a product, a function that actually works for you and start there. For fintechs, I'd question them if they weren't going AI first. I would start there because that's where the future is. If you're building legacy technology, you're probably doing something wrong. So please start with Gen AI and build from there.
But if you had to concretize it, how does EY adapt its messaging to cater to the unique needs and priorities of all these stakeholders, such as banks, regulators, and also technology vendors?
Yeah, you asked me about a skill that the skill I think was most important to me in my career. I think having empathy is very important when you work with clients, especially when you work with clients that have quite varied structures, maturity, and technology. Right? So it's very important to understand who they are and understand who their customers are at the end of the day, and really tailor your answer accordingly. Right? So if you work with fintechs, we know that they are going to be, accelerated prototyping majority of their products. They don't have a lot of legacy, so it's easy for them to start using AI tools. Get them comfortable with that. I always think about an employee as it's continuing your life as a consumer and an employee, right? So it should be a seamless journey when you use Gen AI. So when I come from, if I'm using Alexa at home and I'm asking Alexa about, can you tell me what my schedule for the day is? I would expect that to be interlinked into my work schedule. And that's right. Okay, I've got a PowerPoint presentation in 2 hours. Can I use ChatGPT to build that PowerPoint presentation? I'm going to tell you the top three things I want to cover. It's going to be 3 slides, right? So I want to have that kind of seamlessly delivered throughout my day-to-day life. I would love to see that in action. I'm hoping that's not too far away. But I think it's, again, very important to understand and be empathetic towards what's happening.
So let's go on to some lighter questions now. What does your typical day look like? You wake up in the morning and then what?
Oh, I feed my cat. That's priority number one.
I love how you thought about every question, but not this one. You just started without thinking. You're just like, I don't want that.
Yeah, so his name is Tio. So Tio gets fed every day at 8 o'clock. So that's priority number one. And then I grab a tea, then have a wash, and either I work from home or I head to the office. But I try to do an hour's walk every day. I've missed most days, if I can say it that way. And yeah, I think probably 8:30 to 5, 6, I'm probably at either client side or in the office. Head back home. Netflix and chill, I suppose. That's what it is. Yeah.
So you do your 10,000 steps a day?
Oh gosh, no, and not recently anyway. I try to. Let's say I do my 50,000 steps a week.
Okay, it's still good, looking at. And how much of this time is taken up by meetings?
So I focus a lot on relationships. So majority of my day tend to be meetings. I like meeting people. I like understanding their problems. I like kind of providing solutions. And you need to talk. You meet people and you need to talk to them through that. So A lot of it is meeting people face to face on Teams, and just generally connecting with them.
What advice would you have for job seekers looking to get into this industry?
I think definitely keep in touch with what's going on in the market, in the regulatory space, understand what's going on across the globe, because no country isn't impacted by what's going on in an adjacent country, right? So where payments are concerned, that there's a lot that we collaborate and we co-share across the globe. So understand everything that's being built out globally, because that will give you that edge that you need when you go for an interview. I think secondly, try to be ahead of some of these new technologies and almost kind of have a vision on how you would like to see it implemented, like generative AI, for example. Take a guess and think of how financial services can use it and in the ways that they're not using it. I think that'll give you that edge as well.
So speaking of like the global nature of the industry, what are the biggest challenges in improving cross-border payments and how can they be addressed in the current state?
I think the biggest challenge is the political landscape where cross-border payments are concerned. I think if you look at how politics and general economics have moved in the last decade or so, especially post-pandemic, there's a lot of protectionism across the globe. I think that really is a bottleneck for cross-border payments to become more efficient. I spoke about instant payments before, and a lot of there's a lot of developments that are happening at the moment across the globe to have interoperability between critical national infrastructure that are delivering real-time payments. But there's a lot of collaboration that needs to go into that. But we know that there are different economies. If I take China, communist country, compared to USA, which is more capitalist, will have a very different approach for when it comes to cross-border payments. So I think we need to figure out what is more important. Is it more important for us to be global citizens and be able to, move across the globe, be as, globally active as possible, or do we need to kind of be siloed in our countries and just understand who we are in that remit? I think it's more important to be a global citizen. I think it's more, it helps with technology, it helps with innovation when you are. So yeah, I think that the biggest challenge is individual countries understanding how they develop cross-border payments and putting their fight aside.
And so how is EY helping clients navigate these challenges? I know you mentioned ideal to euros earlier, but how's in general EI? What's EI's approach here?
I mean, we advise a lot of regulators as well. I think because we understand different market dynamics, I mean, we are a global organization and we understand a lot of market dynamics in different countries. And we are close to regulators as well. I think it helps the discussion. It helps us to bring people together, bring countries together and collaborate across the board. A lot of these technologies that we want to build, the technology itself, it's the same across the globe, right? It doesn't change. If I want to build out instant payments, the technology, the rails that sit behind that doesn't change when I look at China or the USA or the UK or Canada. It's very similar. So I think it's making them understand that there's a lot of mutuality across the board and bringing people together to collaborate.
How do evolving regulations impact payment strategies, and how can organizations stay compliant while innovating at the same time?
So I think it's very important to have an open, continuous, honest dialogue with the regulator. If you look at majority of the mature banks, actually all of the mature banks, they have that open dialogue. So any challenges they've got with the regulations that they have to implement, they will be open and honest about. If you look at operations resilience as one of the big regulations we have to implement, majority of the banks started that conversation early on with the regulators, the PSR, with the FCA, with the Bank of England. And it's important to be open and honest about what you can do and what you can't do. And I think the UK is pretty good at that in most instances. So I think it's very important, regardless of how big or small or how mature your organization is, to be connected to the regulator and be proactive about that dialogue.
And so how does the EY support its clients in balancing such innovation with regulatory requirements?
So we usually act as the mediator between regulators and our clients. Because we have former regulators in EY who understand full regulatory landscape in UK and wider Europe and even globally, and they can advise and they can help that conversation. So it's I'm an innovator at heart, so I'm always a fan of let's first think about how we develop the technology, understand the challenges of it, and then go to the regulator and be honest about it. Because regulators want to innovate, right? They don't want to be the hindrance of innovation, but you need to time it correctly so that you are preventing human harm. Because there are some technologies, like generative AI is a good example, right? You need to figure out what is that pivot, like what is that tipping point at which you are going to cause human harm because there isn't a right control in place. So I think, yes, please do innovate, but make sure at the right point when you're not certain about where you're heading, get the right people into the room and have that conversation, because that's the thing that's going to differentiate you from other players.
So the last question for you is of a personal kind. What would you be doing in your life if not this?
Oh gosh. I'll be a music producer for sure. Yeah, for sure. I'm Anuradhi Widyalankara. I'm Director in Payment Strategy and Technology in the UK Payments Practice. Catch me on the Technologist of the Month show.